If you can't sit with your own thoughts, you're not in control. Your habits are. Most people don't even notice how much they run from silence. The second things slow down, they grab the phone, turn on the TV, or scroll through something meaningless. They avoid boredom like it's a bad thing. But here's the truth. Those quiet moments you keep skipping are the exact moments you need to get your focus back. That's where your real thoughts come up. That's when your mind resets. This video is about the art of productive boredom. Reclaim your focus one moment at a time. It's not some trick. It's not about motivation hype. It's about getting honest with how you think, how you live, and how you respond when life gets quiet. Because how you use your small moments decides everything. If your mind feels loud, tired, or out of control, this will help you slow down and finally take back your focus. Chapter 1. Stop chasing noise and feel what your mind needs. If there's a pause, even for a few seconds, the mind reaches for the phone. We stop drinking noise. If there's a pause, even for a few seconds, the mind isn't constantly entertained. We start to feel lost. But I want to tell you this. The mind isn't constantly entertained. We start to feel lost. But I want to tell you this. The problem isn't boredom. The problem is how we respond to it. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's actually a doorway. But most people are running so fast, chasing noise, they never get close enough to open that door. And why are they chasing noise? Because it gives them an escape, an excuse not to sit with themselves, an excuse not to feel what's real. Because when you stop the music, when the background noise goes quiet, what's left? It's you. It's your thoughts. It's your doubts. It's your dreams. It's your regrets. And most people aren't ready to face all that. So they run to something loud. They run to something quick, something that gives them the illusion that they're busy, productive, or important. But the truth is, distraction is cheap. It's easy to find. It takes nothing from you at first, but over time, it starts draining your attention. It starts weakening your focus. And before you know it, you're living your life reacting instead of thinking. You're existing instead of building. You're filling your hours with stuff that doesn't move you forward in any meaningful way. You want to reclaim your focus, but then you have to stop chasing noise. You have to stop giving in to every little distraction. You have to build the strength to sit in silence and actually hear yourself think. Because when you do that, something changes. You start to feel what your mind really needs. Not what it wants in the moment, not what it's been programmed to crave, but what it deeply, honestly needs. And do you know what your mind often needs? A speed, clarity, rest, direction, purpose, a reset. But you can't get any of that in a noisy environment. You can't find yourself while running from yourself. You need to pause. You need to sit with boredom. You need to allow that uncomfortable silence to do its work. Some people think that being bored is a sign of laziness. No. Sometimes boredom is a sign you've been moving too fast without purpose. It's your mind's way of asking you to slow down and reevaluate. It's asking, are you still heading in the right direction? Are you still aligned with what matters to you? Are you living with intention? Or are you just filling time? When you stop chasing noise, you give yourself a chance to hear the answers to those questions. That's how you reclaim your focus, one moment at a time. Now, I know, it won't be comfortable at first. Most people feel uneasy in silence, but that's the point. That's where growth starts. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens when you lean into what you've been avoiding. When you're constantly consuming noise, your attention becomes shallow. Your creativity suffers. You can't go deep on anything because your mind never gets the space to breathe. But when you sit in that quiet space, when you allow boredom to stretch out and settle, you start to think differently. You start to reflect. You start to ask better questions. You get ideas that weren't available when your mind was clouded by notifications and fast content. And most importantly, you get honest. You get honest with yourself about what's working and what's not, about what you've been avoiding, about what you truly want. You see, boredom is not the problem, it's the teacher. And most people are failing the lesson because they won't sit long enough to learn anything. You've got to be stronger than the urge to escape. You've got to learn to stay. Stay with your thoughts. Stay with the discomfort. Stay until the fog starts to clear, because if you don't stay, you miss it. You miss the clarity. You miss the focus. You miss the breakthrough. The world will keep offering you noise. It will keep telling you that every moment should be filled, that silence is empty. But the truth is, silence is full. It's full of answers. It's full of strength. It's full of direction. But only if you're brave enough to sit in it. Now, I want to talk to you straight. If you can't be alone with yourself, you'll never be in control of your life. If you can't pause for a few minutes without grabbing your phone or turning on something just to fill the silence, then you're not choosing your life. You're reacting to it. And that will cost you. Not all at once, but little by little it chips away at your ability to focus, your ability to decide, your ability to lead yourself. And that's what this is really about, self-leadership. Because no one's coming to fix your focus. No one's going to create the space for you to slow down. You have to do that. You have to protect your time. You have to protect your attention like it's your future, because it is. Start small. Start with 5 minutes a day. Sit quietly, no phone, no distractions. Just sit. Feel the discomfort. Feel the urge to run. Then stay anyway. You'll learn more in that quiet space than you ever will from endless scrolling. And as you stay consistent, something powerful happens. Your mind gets stronger. Your focus gets sharper. You begin to notice things. You begin to see how much you were missing when you were always chasing noise. You begin to use boredom as a tool instead of fearing it. That's what productive boredom is. It's not wasting time doing nothing. It's using quiet time to listen, to reflect, to choose your next move with clarity. It's how strong people rebuild their focus. It's how anyone, no matter where they are in life, can take back their power. You don't need another app. You don't need another hack. You need to stop and feel what your mind actually needs. And most days, it just needs you to slow down. You don't have to live on autopilot. You don't have to keep running. You can stop, you can listen, you can think. And from that place of quiet strength, you can make decisions that actually improve your life. Stop chasing noise. It's not helping you. It's distracting you. And life is too short to live distracted. You've got dreams, you've got goals, you've got people counting on you. But more than that, you've got yourself to show up for. And the only way to really show up is by getting quiet enough to hear what matters. Reclaim your focus. One quiet moment at a time. Chapter 2. Choose boredom over chaos to rebuild inner control. Most people are living in a constant state of chaos, not because life demands it, but because they've gotten used to it. They don't know any other way. They wake up, rush into the day, flood their minds with noise, and call it normal. The moment there's a gap, they fill it. The moment there's stillness, they panic. They confuse movement with progress. They confuse urgency with importance. And slowly, without noticing, they lose their inner control. They live based on pressure, not intention. But here's the truth. Control is not found in noise. It's not built in chaos. It's not developed by doing more than you can manage. Real control begins in the quiet moments. It begins when you choose not to react, not to reach, not to escape the boredom, but to sit with it and let your mind settle. That's when your power starts coming back. People think boredom is a waste of time. That's because they've never really used it. Most of what we call boredom today is just a lack of distraction, and in that space, your real thoughts start to surface. You start to realize how scattered you've become. You begin to feel the weight of how far you've drifted from clarity, and it's uncomfortable, because it exposes the parts of you you've been neglecting. But that discomfort is the beginning of control. When you sit with it instead of running from it, you start to take your attention back. You begin to choose your thoughts instead of letting them bounce all over the place. You start to notice what matters and what's just noise. Choosing boredom isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing what's necessary to get your mind back under your command. It's about saying no to the chaos that's been consuming your time, your focus, and your peace. It's about creating space so that your actions come from intention instead of anxiety. People will say, "But I don't have time to be bored." That's not true. What they mean is, I'm afraid of what I'll feel if I stop. They're afraid of slowing down because they don't know what will come up. They're afraid of not being busy because they've attached their worth to productivity. But running faster doesn't fix the problem, it makes it worse. And one day, it all catches up. The stress, the overwhelm, the lack of direction. That's the cost of chaos. If you want to rebuild your inner control, you have to stop feeding the chaos. You have to stop saying yes to every little thing that asks for your attention. You have to put space between you and the noise. And that starts with choosing boredom. Not by force, but on purpose. As a habit, as a discipline. Start by creating 5 minutes a day where you do absolutely nothing. Sit still, no scrolling, no sound, no reacting, just you and your thoughts. At first, it might feel pointless, but that's only because you're not used to it. You've trained your mind to avoid it. But if you stay consistent, something will shift. Your thinking will slow down, your emotions will settle, and a sense of calm will start to return. That calm isn't just peace, it's control. Because from that place you start to make better decisions. You stop reacting to everything. You pause, you evaluate, you think. And that's where real strength begins to grow. When you choose boredom, you're choosing mastery over your mind. You're telling yourself, I don't need constant stimulation to feel okay. You're training your brain to find value in stillness. And that is a rare skill in today's world. But it's also a powerful one. Look around. How many people do you know who are calm, clear, and in control of their life? Not many. That's because they never learned to step away from the noise. They never practiced silence. They never built the strength to sit alone and think. But you can. You can start today. You don't need to change your entire life. You don't need to move to the mountains or unplug completely. You just need to make small, daily choices that support your focus instead of attacking it. Say no to things that don't matter. Turn off what isn't helping. Pause before responding. Take 5 minutes to breathe before starting your day. Use a few minutes before bed to just sit and review your thoughts. These small acts of stillness are not random. They are practice. They are how you rebuild your ability to lead your own mind. Control is a muscle. It grows with repetition. And boredom, when used with purpose, becomes the gym where you train that muscle. This isn't easy work. Most people will never do it. They'll keep running, they'll keep avoiding, they'll keep blaming the world for their lack of peace, instead of owning the fact that they haven't taken a moment to quiet down. But you can do something different. You can stop living under pressure and start living with intention. You can turn down the volume on your life and hear what's really going on inside. You can choose boredom, not as a punishment, but as a path to self-control. Think about this. When was the last time you sat still, without reaching for something? No phone, no screen, no music, just you and your thoughts. If that feels uncomfortable to imagine, then it's exactly what you need. We spend so much time running from ourselves, we forget we are the solution we're looking for. You don't need another podcast episode, another video, another quote. You need time to process what you've already heard. You need time to think deeply, not just consume more. You need time to ask yourself, am I living the way I want to live, or just reacting to what life throws at me? You won't find those answers in chaos. You'll find them in stillness. You'll find them in the space you make for boredom. And the more you return to that space, the more control you begin to reclaim. There's a kind of quiet power that builds when you stop needing constant input. You start to trust yourself more. You start to hear your own voice louder than the world's. You stop following trends and you start following what matters to you. That's not just focus, that's freedom. And it begins with a choice, a simple one. You don't have to fight the chaos. You don't have to conquer it all at once. You just have to stop feeding it. Start choosing boredom. Start choosing stillness. Start choosing to think before reacting. Start choosing to reflect before acting. Do this daily. Make it a habit, not something dramatic, just consistent. Create a routine that includes space for your mind to settle. Make room in your life for moments without noise. Let yourself feel the stillness. Let yourself notice what you've been running from. Let your mind catch up with your life. This is not about becoming passive, it's about becoming deliberate. It's about choosing your path instead of being pulled in every direction. Chaos will always exist, but it doesn't have to rule you. You can lead yourself. You can slow down. You can think clearly. You can rebuild control, one quiet moment at a time. And the more you do it, the stronger you'll feel. Not rushed, not reactive, but calm, focused, grounded. And when challenges come, and they always do, you'll be ready. You'll have your control. You'll have your mind. You won't be thrown around by every little thing. You'll know where you stand. And that kind of strength, that kind of clarity, it's worth everything. So start now, even just 5 minutes. No noise, no pressure, just boredom, just you. That's where it begins. That's how you take your power back. That's how you start to rebuild the control that chaos has taken from you. And once you feel that control growing inside you, you won't want to go back, because it feels right, it feels honest, and it feels like peace.
Chapter 3. Face the silence and learn what drives you. Most people go through life without ever really knowing what drives them. They move from one thing to the next, chasing approval, chasing money, chasing comfort, but never pausing long enough to ask themselves what truly matters. The reason is simple: they avoid silence. They stay busy, stay loud, stay distracted, because silence forces you to face the truth. Silence shows you who you are when there's nothing to perform for, nothing to hide behind, nothing to numb yourself with. And for many, that truth is uncomfortable. But if you want to live a life with direction, you have to be brave enough to face the silence. There's a voice inside you that knows what matters. It knows what you care about. It knows what you've ignored. It knows what makes you feel alive. But that voice is not loud. It doesn't compete with notifications. It doesn't scream over entertainment. It speaks in the quiet. And if you never make room for that quiet, you'll never hear it. Facing the silence is about creating space to meet yourself fully and honestly. Not the version of you that others see, not the one shaped by pressure, not the one constantly trying to keep up, but the one that exists underneath all that. Most people never meet that version of themselves. They're too busy playing a role. They're too caught up in how life looks to stop and think about how it feels. But you can't build a life that fits you if you don't know what you truly want. You can't develop real drive if you haven't asked yourself why you're doing what you're doing. That's what silence helps you do. It pulls everything else away so you can see what's really left. And what's left, what remains in that quiet, is the core of your motivation. Some people spend years chasing goals they never chose. They were told what success should look like. They were told what to want, and without thinking, they followed. But one day, when the noise fades, they realize they don't feel fulfilled. They feel tired. They feel disconnected. That's because they never faced the silence. They never asked themselves the hard questions. They never took the time to find out what they're truly driven by. You have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to turn everything off and sit with yourself. No distractions, no explanations, no escape, just sit. Listen to your thoughts. Feel your emotion. Notice what keeps showing up in your mind. Notice what you miss. Notice what feels heavy. Notice what lights something up inside you. That's the information you've been missing while being constantly entertained. Your drive comes from clarity, not confusion. It comes from connection, not chaos. You can't fake passion. You can't pretend to care about something forever. At some point, your soul starts asking for more. And if you keep ignoring that voice, you'll start feeling it in your body. You'll start feeling stuck. You'll feel anxious. You'll feel like you're running, not going anywhere. That's your inner self saying, stop, be still, and face what's real. Silence gives you that chance. It's not a punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to stop performing and start understanding. An invitation to get to the root of what's driving you, or what's been draining you. You don't need a retreat. You don't need to escape your life. You just need to pause, even 10 minutes a day. Sit in a room. No phone. No screen. No music. Just you. You might feel restless at first. That's okay. That restlessness is part of the process. It's your system adjusting. It's your thoughts realigning. Stay with it. Don't run. Don't check out. Just stay. Eventually the surface noise settles, and underneath it you'll start to hear things you've been avoiding. Memories, thoughts, desires, regrets, ideas. They're not random. They're the truth. And the more you pay attention, the more you'll start to recognize patterns. You'll notice what matters to you. You'll realize what you've been chasing that no longer fits. You'll get honest about the things you've been doing for the wrong reasons, and from that awareness, real change can begin. The world will always try to keep you moving. It will push you to stay plugged in, to stay available, to stay reacting. But none of that leads to inner control. None of that leads to personal clarity. You need time with yourself. Real time. Not thinking about what's next, not planning every second, but just being fully present with your own thoughts. When you face the silence, you start to understand your pattern. You begin to see what triggers your frustration, what fuels your fear, and what sparks your creativity. You begin to understand how your past shaped your present. You see how certain habits are keeping you small. You realize that some of your stress isn't coming from what's happening around you, it's coming from what you've refused to face within you. And that's the breakthrough most people miss. They think if they keep moving, the uncomfortable feelings will go away. But they don't. They build. They get louder. They find ways to show up, and until you stop and deal with them, they will continue to shape your decisions in ways you don't even notice. Silence is where you take that power back. Not all at once. Not in some big dramatic moment, but gradually, consistently, one honest thought at a time. You rebuild your connection with yourself. You start to lead your life from a place of clarity instead of confusion. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from pretending to have it all figured out, but from knowing what truly drives you. You can't fake alignment. People try. They smile. They post. They talk about how good things are. But deep down they feel off. Something doesn't match. And they can't explain it. That's what happens when you don't give yourself time to process, when you don't slow down long enough to notice what's going on under the surface. Your life is not just about what you do. It's about why you do it. And if you haven't faced the silence, you might be spending years working hard on the wrong things. Sit with yourself. Ask the hard question. What do I want? Why do I want it? What am I afraid of? What am I proud of? What do I keep avoiding? Who am I when no one's watching? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary, because they open the path to real growth. Facing the silence isn't a one-time event, it's a habit, discipline, a practice that grounds you, a practice that clears out the mental junk and creates space for better thoughts. It's where your next chapter starts. Not because you copied someone else's path, but because you finally listened to your own. No one can do this work for you. No one can hand you clarity. No one can give you lasting motivation if you haven't faced your truth. You have to be willing to pause. You have to want something deeper than noise and distraction. You have to care enough about your life to slow down and check it. And when you do, you'll find answers that were never out there. They were always in you, waiting for you to stop, waiting for you to listen, waiting for you to trust that your own voice matters more than all the noise around you. This is where you reconnect with purpose, not through pressure, not through force, but through presence, through stillness, through honesty. That's the kind of motivation that doesn't wear off. That's the kind of direction that lasts. If you felt disconnected, if you felt lost, if you've been pushing through days without feeling clear, then silence is your way back. Not the kind that isolates you, but the kind that brings you home to yourself. Give yourself time every day to face it. Not once in a while. Every day. Give yourself the gift of not performing, of not explaining, of not consuming, just being. That's where the answers live. That's where the next version of you begins. What drives you isn't found in noise, it's found in the quiet. You just have to be willing to listen, and if you keep showing up in that silence, you'll not only discover what drives you, you'll also find what gives you peace, what makes you feel alive, and what kind of life you truly want to build. That is worth everything. And it all begins the moment you stop running and face the silence.
Chapter 4. Slow your pace to reconnect with your real goals. Most people are moving fast, not because they have to, but because they've convinced themselves they'll fall behind if they don't. They keep pushing, keep rushing, keep adding more to their days, thinking that speed equals success. But often, it's that exact speed that pulls them away from what they truly want. They get so caught up in momentum that they forget to check their direction. That's the danger of moving too fast.
You lose sight of what matters. You confuse urgency with importance. You confuse effort with alignment. You stay busy, but stop being intentional. You were not meant to race through life. You were meant to lead it. But you can't lead your life if you're always running. At some point, you have to slow your pace. Not because you're weak, not because you're falling behind, but because you need to make sure you're still headed where you really want to go. When you move too fast, everything becomes a blur. You stop noticing your progress. You stop feeling your emotions. You stop thinking deeply. You make choices out of habit, not reflection. You keep saying yes without pausing to ask if it fits your priorities. Eventually, you look around and realize you've been chasing a version of success that doesn't feel like yours. That's the cost of never slowing down. You forget why you started. You forget what you value. You forget the dreams you had before the world told you to be quicker, to be busier, to do more. But real progress isn't found in the rush. It's found in the moments where you slow down enough to think, to question, to realign. Your goals aren't just tasks to check off. They're supposed to come from the deepest part of you. But if you never slow your pace, you won't hear that part. You'll just keep reacting to life instead of shaping it. When you move slower, you start seeing more. You start catching things you missed before. You start asking better questions. Why am I doing this? Does this matter to me? Am I being true to what I believe in? Those questions don't come up when your life is a sprint. They come up when you stop and breathe, when you stop and look, when you stop and feel, and when you slow down, something powerful happens. You reconnect with your real goals, not the ones you took from someone else, not the ones you set because you felt pressure, not the ones that look good on paper, but leave you feeling empty. Your real goals, the ones that speak to your values, the ones that make sense in the quiet of your own mind, the ones that still make you feel something when everything else fades. But you can't reconnect with those goals if your mind is always racing. You have to stop and ask, is the life I'm building actually the one I want to live? Am I on a path that feels right? Or have I been moving so fast that I didn't even notice when I drifted away from it? Slowing your pace doesn't mean doing less with your life. It means doing more of what matters. It means protecting your attention so you can use it with purpose. It means honoring your time so you can build something that lasts. We live in a culture that rewards hustle, even if it leads to burnout. It praises action, even when that action is directionless. But what's the point of being productive if you're producing the wrong result? What's the point of speed if you're speeding in the wrong direction? That's why slowing down is a strength. It shows maturity. It shows discipline. It shows that you're not here to impress people with how busy you look. You're here to build a life that actually means something to you. Slowing your pace creates space for clarity. You begin to see the difference between movement and progress. You realize that saying no doesn't mean you're falling behind. It means you're focused. You stop chasing every opportunity and start choosing the ones that fit your purpose. You can still be ambitious. You can still work hard, but you do it from a place of calm, not chaos. You do it from a place of self-leadership, not pressure. You do it because you know where you're going, not because you're afraid to stop. Take time this week to pause and evaluate. Look at your goals. Ask yourself if they still feel right. Ask yourself if they still inspire you. Ask yourself if you've been moving toward them with intention, or if you've just been caught in a cycle of doing. That's where the shift begins, not in some big change, but in a quiet decision to slow your steps and walk with purpose. This isn't about rejecting speed altogether. There will be seasons of hustle. There will be times when urgency is necessary, but it should never be your default setting. It should never replace your ability to think clearly. You should never be so busy that you forget what you're working for. When you slow your pace, you give yourself time to plan better. You make fewer mistakes. You catch things early. You create space for reflection. You become more connected to your work and more aware of your choices. That's not being lazy. That's being intentional. There is nothing more frustrating than waking up one day and realizing you've worked so hard on something that no longer matters to you. That's what happens when you don't stop to evaluate. That's what happens when you let the world set your pace for you. But you're not here to live someone else's timeline. You're not here to keep up. You're here to create something real, and real takes time. Real takes patience. Real takes slowing down enough to make the right moves. The most powerful people in the world are not the busiest. They're the ones who think before they act. They're the ones who pause before they speak. They're the ones who step back before they commit. They don't rush because they don't need to. They're grounded. They know what they want, and they don't trade that for anything. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, it's probably not because you're doing too little. It's because you're doing too much without direction. The answer isn't always to push harder. Sometimes the answer is to stop and reset. Look at your calendar. Look at how you spend your days. How much of it reflects your real priorities? How much of it is driven by fear of missing out, by guilt, by pressure? That's the hard truth most people avoid. But facing it is how you get your life back. Slow your pace, not someday. Now, make it a practice. Build moments of stillness into your day. Use them to check in. Use them to adjust. Use them to remind yourself of what you care about. That's how you stay aligned. That's how you stay clear. And don't wait until you crash. Don't wait until life forces you to stop. Choose it now. Choose it because you're wise enough to see that real achievement is not built in noise. It's built in focus. It's built in rhythm. It's built in knowing what matters and having the courage to slow down long enough to honor it. This isn't about stepping back from your life. It's about stepping into it with your full attention. That's how real goals are reached. Not through speed, but through steady steps taken in the right direction. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to keep up with everyone. You need to move at a pace that allows you to stay connected to yourself. That's where you find peace. That's where you find meaning. That's where you do your best work. So take that moment, step away from the noise, slow your breathing, think about where you're going, think about what you really want, think about what you're chasing, and whether it still belongs to you. Let that reflection shape your next move, because when you move with clarity, you don't need speed, you need direction, you need purpose, and you need the strength to move at the pace that serves your life, not the one that steals your peace. Start today, one step at a time, one decision at a time. Choose to slow your pace. Choose to reconnect with your real goals. And from that place of intention, start building a life that actually feels right. Not just fast, but real. That's the goal.
Chapter 5. Hold back from scrolling and breathe through discomfort. There's a habit that's become so normal in today's world that most people don't even notice it. The moment there's a pause, a little stress, a few seconds of silence, the hand reaches for the phone. It's automatic, it's unconscious. It's the escape route we've trained ourselves to take. That small movement, that simple scroll, has become the way we avoid dealing with what we're really feeling. The truth is, we don't like discomfort. We don't like sitting in uncertainty. We don't like being bored. So instead of facing it, we scroll past it. But here's the cost. Every time we do that, we weaken our ability to sit with life. When you scroll, you distract your brain from what it was about to process. Maybe it was anxiety. Maybe it was confusion. Maybe it was something you needed to feel and think through. But you don't give it that chance. You change the channel too fast. You mute the message. And over time, your capacity to handle discomfort starts shrinking. You start relying on distractions as a coping mechanism, and while that might bring quick relief, it comes at the expense of personal strength. If you want to grow, you have to stop reaching for the escape every time it gets uncomfortable. You have to train yourself to hold back. Not forever. Just for a few moments. Just long enough to feel what's really going on.
just long enough to breathe through the tension without trying to avoid it, because real growth begins when you stop running from the hard path. The reason so many people feel stuck, unmotivated, or disconnected is because they never give themselves time to sit with what's bothering them. They patch over their emotions with entertainment, they numb their stress with screen time. And by doing that, they rob themselves of the chance to actually deal with the root of what's wrong. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's a signal. It's your body's way of saying something needs your attention. But instead of facing it, we bury it under more content, more noise, more scrolling. Then we wonder why we feel anxious, why we feel lost, why we feel drained after spending hours online. The scroll doesn't heal anything, it just postpones it, and the longer you postpone, the heavier it becomes. But if you could pause just for a minute, you'd see that most of that discomfort can be managed. You don't have to run from it, you don't have to drown it, you just have to breathe through it. Breathing sounds simple, but it's powerful. When you choose to take a deep breath instead of reaching for your phone, you interrupt the pattern. You send a signal to your body that you're safe. You give your mind the space it needs to think clearly. You allow your emotions to settle instead of being ignored. And in that space, you learn something important. You can handle more than you think. You can sit with a little anxiety. You can move through a moment of boredom. You can face stress without numbing it. You don't need a screen to save you. You just need to stay present. This kind of discipline doesn't come overnight. It takes practice. But it starts with one small decision. The next time you feel that urge to scroll, stop. Don't judge it. Don't shame yourself. Just notice it. Then choose to sit for a moment. Take a breath. Feel the discomfort. Ask yourself, what's really going on? You might notice you're tired. You might feel a little lost. Maybe you're overwhelmed or uncertain about something in your life. Whatever it is, give it space. Let it be seen. Let it move through you naturally, instead of trying to force it away. That's how you build mental strength. Not by avoiding discomfort, but by making peace with it. And you'll start to notice a change. You'll begin to feel more in control, more grounded, more connected to your own thoughts. Because now you're not just reacting, you're responding. You're choosing how to deal with your emotions instead of letting technology decide for you. There's no app that can give you this. No scroll that can replace it. This is about reclaiming your presence. It's about remembering that your mind and body are capable of handling more than you've been told. You don't have to check out every time you feel pressure. You can breathe through it. You can listen to it. You can let it pass without letting it control you. The world is full of tools designed to take your attention. They're built to keep you engaged, not to help you grow. But you're not here to be distracted. You're here to grow stronger. And that growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from making different choices, starting with the choice to be present when it matters most. You'll start noticing that many of the things you thought were overwhelming actually lose their power when you sit with them. The emotion that felt like too much becomes manageable when you give it a little time. The anxiety that felt heavy becomes lighter when you breathe through it instead of suppressing it. That's not magic. That's presence. And once you experience that, something shifts. You stop fearing discomfort. You stop needing distraction. You start trusting yourself more. You realize that you don't need to run from your emotions, you just need to understand them. You don't need to scroll away your stress. You need to meet it with breath and clarity. There's freedom in that. Freedom from addiction to noise, freedom from being controlled by impulse, freedom to live your life on your own terms. Not the terms set by an algorithm or a trend. That freedom starts with discipline. And that discipline starts with a moment, a choice, a breath. So the next time you catch yourself about to scroll, pause, place the phone down, sit quietly, inhale slowly, exhale even slower, check in with yourself, ask what you're feeling, ask what triggered it. You don't need to solve it all, you just need to feel it. That's enough. That's more than enough. This is how you become emotionally resilient, not by pretending you're fine, not by pushing things away, but by facing them head on, with honesty and calm. And the more you practice this, the stronger you get. Your mind becomes sharper, your emotions become steadier, your energy becomes more focused. You'll notice you're less reactive. You stop needing constant stimulation. You start creating space in your day to think clearly. That's when new ideas start coming in. That's when you feel your creativity returning. That's when your energy starts flowing in the right direction. You're not meant to be overwhelmed all the time. You're not built to live on high alert. You're meant to be present, clear, strong. And to get there, you have to stop trading your attention for temporary comfort. Scrolling may feel like relief in the moment, but it comes with a cost. It steals the minutes you could have used to understand yourself. It replaces reflection with distraction. And when you do it over and over again, it becomes harder to know who you are without it. But you're not here to live numb. You're here to live awake. And living awake means you have to stay with the discomfort long enough to learn from it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present, one breath at a time. This isn't about cutting off all technology. It's about reclaiming your relationship with it. It's about making sure you're the one in control. It's about using your tools instead of being used by them. You have more power than you think, more strength than you've tapped into. You don't need to escape every hard feeling. You just need to remember that you're capable of moving through it. So start now, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. Hold back from scrolling. Sit with yourself. Feel the discomfort. Let it teach you. Let it move through you. Let it shape you into someone who doesn't run, but rises. Someone who chooses clarity over chaos. Someone who leads their life instead of being led by habit. That person is in you. They've always been in you. And they come alive every time you choose to breathe instead of escape. That's the real path forward. And it begins right now, right where you are, in this very breath.
Chapter 6. Let your mind wander and watch what surfaces next. In today's world, everyone is trying to manage their thoughts, control their focus, direct every second of their attention. There are books and apps and strategies promising better concentration, sharper productivity, and more output. But what if the answer wasn't in control? What if the breakthrough came when you stopped trying to hold your mind so tightly and instead allowed it to wander? You've been taught to stay focused, but not every thought needs direction. Some thoughts only appear when your mind is free to roam. And that freedom, the kind where you're not forcing anything, is where insight begins. When you allow your mind to wander, you create a different kind of space. Not one filled with noise, not one driven by urgency, but one that feels safe, open, and slow. This is where you meet your creativity. This is where you discover the hidden thoughts you didn't know you had. You begin to uncover the questions you didn't realize were forming. It's not about being passive, it's about giving your mind permission to breathe without pressure. When you stop chasing thoughts, they begin to show up on their own, often the most meaningful ones. You don't need to be thinking about everything all the time. Some of your most important realizations won't come during your most focused moments.
They will arrive when you least expect them, in the pauses, in the stillness, in the empty space you usually rush to fill. That's why it's so important to let your mind wander. Not because you're avoiding responsibility, but because you're opening yourself to a deeper level of thinking. Most people don't do this because they're afraid of what will surface. If you sit still and don't give your mind a task, it might bring up something uncomfortable. It might remind you of an unfinished task, a missed opportunity, a feeling you've been ignoring. But that's not a bad thing. That's your mind doing its job. That's your subconscious trying to get your attention, and the only way to hear it is to stop directing it every second. You can't access your deeper thinking if your mind is always on a schedule. You need unstructured time when you're not being productive in the traditional sense, time when you're not trying to solve or fix or finish, just time when your thoughts can move naturally. This isn't about being distracted, it's about intentional openness. It's about trusting that your mind knows what it's doing if you stop interfering. Give yourself moments where you don't force focus. Go for a walk without your phone. Sit outside without a podcast playing. Let your mind go where it wants to go. Notice what keeps coming up. Notice where your thoughts drift. That's not wasted time. That's how you start to understand what's beneath the surface. That's where patterns begin to reveal themselves. You might be surprised by what shows up. A memory you haven't thought about in years. An idea that makes something suddenly click. A realization that brings you peace. These moments can't be forced. They can't be scheduled. They come when you're present but not pressuring. When you're aware but not overthinking. There's wisdom hiding in your silence. There are solutions living in your stillness, but you won't find them if you never allow space. You won't discover them if your day is packed from start to finish with content, conversation, and constant planning. That kind of mental load shuts down your intuition. It blocks the part of you that knows how to connect the dots without being told to. Letting your mind wander is a skill. At first you'll feel like you're wasting time, but if you stay with it, if you let it unfold naturally, you'll start to notice how much your brain has been waiting for you to slow down. You'll realize how many ideas have been pushed aside because they didn't have a moment to grow. You'll feel how much noise has been covering up what really matters to you. You don't need another strategy right now. You need a pause, a deliberate break from managing every thought. Because when you stop trying to control the process, you actually begin to understand it. You see how your thoughts interact, how emotions shape ideas, how small details connect to big decisions, and none of this happens in a rushed or rigid space. It's okay to let your mind feel loose. It's okay to not have a plan for every second. That freedom isn't laziness, it's how clarity finds its way to you. Some of the best ideas in the world were born during idle moments. Some of the most important decisions began as quiet questions that floated up during peaceful, unplanned thinking. The key is to make room for those moments. Don't be afraid of the stillness. Don't rush to fill every gap. Those empty moments are not empty at all. They're full of potential. Your brain needs time to decompress, to sort, to wonder. And in that wondering, you gain access to a part of yourself that doesn't speak in urgency. It speaks in curiosity. It speaks in truth. You've been conditioned to believe that doing nothing is unproductive, but mental wandering isn't doing nothing. It's doing something that modern life rarely encourages. It's letting your inner world speak. It's giving your mind a chance to bring what's hidden into the light. And if you listen long enough, you'll begin to understand yourself in ways you never could, through constant control. So stop trying to force insight. Stop trying to demand answers. Instead, create an environment where they can rise naturally. Step away from the noise. Put down the schedule. Turn off the pressure. And just be with your own thoughts. Let them float. Let them shift. Let them come and go. Don't try to hold on. Just observe. You'll notice that the more you allow this, the more you begin to trust your own thinking. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, less rushed, more deliberate. You're not forcing clarity, it's rising on its own. And the more you let it happen, the more insight begins to shape your choices. This process isn't about losing control. It's about giving yourself the space to explore what's already inside you. You're not trying to empty your mind, you're giving it space to speak up, and when it does, listen. Write it down, reflect on it, use. This is how you build a stronger relationship with your own thoughts. The world will always offer you something else to focus on. Another task, another post, another obligation. But you have a choice. You can keep filling your mind with more, or you can make space for what's already there. You can let your mind race, or you can let it wander. One leads to burnout. The other leads to discovery. And what you'll discover is this: you already know more than you think. You already carry ideas worth acting on. You already have questions that can guide your growth, but you've been too busy to hear them. You've been too distracted to notice them. That changes when you start giving yourself regular time to just think without force. You don't need to control every moment. You don't need to direct everything. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get out of your own way. Sit quietly. Let your mind do what it naturally does. Trust that it will show you what you need to see. And when it does, be ready. That's your starting point. That's your truth. Not every moment needs to be filled. Not every thought needs to be controlled. Sometimes you just need to slow down, relax your grip, and allow your mind to roam. What comes up might surprise you. It might challenge you. It might inspire you. But it will always move you forward if you're willing to listen.
Chapter 7. Break your patterns by doing absolutely nothing today. Most people wake up and immediately follow a pattern they didn't even choose. The alarm rings, the phone lights up, and without thinking, they're in motion. They check notifications, reply to messages, scroll through endless updates, then rush into tasks. The entire day runs on default, and this happens again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Days turn into weeks, and they wonder why they feel stuck, unmotivated or disconnected. But they never pause long enough to see the real issue. The issue isn't that they're not doing enough, it's that they're doing the same thing every single day without stopping to question it. The repetition becomes a cage, and the routine becomes the reason for the lack of growth. If you want to change your life, you don't always need to add more. Sometimes you need to subtract. You need to pause. You need to step outside of your usual flow. You need to break your pattern. And one of the most powerful ways to do that is by doing absolutely nothing today. Doing nothing doesn't mean you're being lazy. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're choosing to stop the automatic behavior and see what's underneath. It means you're interrupting the loop that's been controlling your days. When you stop doing, your real thoughts have a chance to catch up. You begin to notice where your energy's been going, what you've been avoiding, and what needs to change. Most people are afraid of stillness because it feels unfamiliar. They've trained themselves to always be moving, always be producing, always be reacting, but that constant motion is what keeps them disconnected from what matters. When you break the cycle even for a day, you open space for self-awareness. You begin to see how much of your life is being run on autopilot. Doing nothing doesn't mean wasting the day. It means using the day differently. It means observing instead of reacting, listening instead of performing. It means watching how your mind behaves when you're not rushing from one task to the next. That's when you begin to understand the hidden pressures that have been steering your behavior. When you stop everything, even for a short period, the truth starts to show up. You might realize how tense you've been. You might feel how exhausted your mind really is.
You might recognize how much your actions are shaped by fear or expectation. These are things that never surface when you're buried in busyness. Most of what we call productivity is just repetition. It's doing the same kind of work, under the same kind of pressure, for the same kind of results. There's no space for creativity or reflection. That's why doing nothing can be so powerful. It disrupts the script. It puts a break in the cycle. And in that break, there's room for something new to enter. Take today and step back from your usual flow. Don't reach for your phone first thing. Don't jump into your to-do list. Don't fill every hour with activity. Just sit. Just breathe. Just watch. Let the discomfort rise if it does. Let the boredom show up. Let the silence stretch. There's nothing wrong with those feelings. They're part of the process. They're signs that something different is happening. When you sit with nothing, you're not wasting time. You're reclaiming it. You're taking back your day from the patterns that no longer serve you. You're showing yourself that your value doesn't come from constant activity. It comes from awareness, from presence, from being able to choose your actions instead of being driven by habit. This is not about being passive. It's about being awake. When you step outside your routine, you begin to see it clearly. You see how often you say yes to things that drain you. You see how many of your actions are based on fear of falling behind. You see how little space you've given yourself to think freely. Doing nothing for a day reveals all of that, not through force, but through stillness. And it's not always easy. You might feel restless. You might feel the urge to check in, to get something done, to make use of the time. That's the habit trying to pull you back in. But if you resist that urge, if you stay in the pause, you gain strength. You remind yourself that you are not your schedule. You are not your output. You are not the endless list of things you do every day. You are something deeper than that. You are the one who chooses. And when you choose to stop, even for a short time, you reconnect with that power. This isn't something you do once and forget. It's something you return to. Not to escape your life, but to reconnect with it. Doing nothing becomes a space where you check in with your mind, your emotions, your direction. It's where you ask, is this still the life I want? Is this routine still supporting who I'm becoming? Or am I just repeating yesterday out of habit? Most of the breakthroughs people wait for don't come from doing more. They come from creating enough space for insight to arrive. That space is where new thoughts are born. It's where your real questions live. It's where creativity starts to breathe again. By doing nothing, you stop filling every gap with noise. You stop running from your thoughts. You sit and watch. You feel what you've been too busy to feel. You hear the ideas that were pushed aside. You connect dots that never had a chance to meet. And from that place of quiet, honest reflection, you change, not by accident, not by force, but by choice. You start doing things differently, not because someone told you to, but because you've finally seen your life with clear eyes. You might discover that some of the things you thought were urgent are not important. You might realize that some of your stress is self-created, born from the belief that rest equals weakness. You might come face to face with goals that no longer excite you, and new ones that have been waiting to be noticed. That's what today is. It's not just about stopping. It's about seeing. It's about noticing the rhythm of your life and asking yourself if it still feels right. It's about learning to pause without guilt, to rest without fear, to reflect without rushing to fix. When you get used to doing nothing from time to time, you begin to live from a deeper place. You're not constantly reacting. You're not always in survival mode. You're choosing. You're thinking. You're giving your attention to what matters, not just to what's loud. This is how you break your patterns. You don't force change through willpower alone. You create space. You let your mind breathe. You watch your habits with new eyes, and in that awareness, change becomes possible. If you're tired of living on repeat, if you feel disconnected from your direction, if you keep doing things that no longer serve you, it's time to pause. It's time to stop. Not forever, just for today, just long enough to notice what's been guiding you, and to decide if it still deserves to. You don't need more time, you need more clarity, and clarity comes from space, not filled space, open space, quiet space. That's what today gives you. So do nothing, sit quietly, watch the thoughts, feel the stillness. Let yourself be a human being, not just a human doing. This is not a waste. This is not weakness. This is how you return to yourself. This is how you begin again. And when tomorrow comes, you'll move with more intention. You'll make better decisions. You'll feel more grounded. Because you didn't keep repeating the same old rhythm. You broke it. You chose to pause. You chose to be present. And from that presence, you found power. That's the strength that comes from stillness. And it's always there for you, every time you choose to stop and do absolutely nothing.
Chapter 8. Use dull moments to reset how you think daily. Most people think transformation only happens during big events or life-changing moments, but the truth is, the most powerful shifts start during the dull ones, the ones that seem meaningless, the ones you overlook, waiting in line, walking down the same street, standing in the kitchen, doing nothing special. That's where your daily life is lived. But here's the catch. Most people spend those moments avoiding themselves. They reach for their phones, scroll without thinking, play something in the background, and try to make the moment pass as fast as possible. What they don't realize is that they're wasting the exact space they need to reset their thinking. Dull moments are not the problem. How we use them is. These pauses in the day, where nothing exciting is happening, are not empty. They're invitations. They're small open windows where you get to check in with your thoughts, your mindset, your direction. But you can't do that if you're always filling those gaps with more noise. Growth doesn't only happen when you're reading a book or listening to a podcast or working toward a goal. Growth happens in silence, in stillness, in repetition. And when you start to use those quiet stretches of time to reflect and reset, your whole mindset starts to shift, slowly but deeply. Every day your mind is being shaped. Not just by what you learn, but by what you think about when nothing is going on. If you spend every dull moment feeding your mind with shallow input, it becomes your default mode. You'll catch yourself scrolling just to avoid sitting with yourself. You'll start reacting instead of thinking. You'll get used to distraction and call it rest. But when you stop and become intentional with those small spaces, you begin to lead your thoughts instead of letting them lead you. Think about it. When do you feel most overwhelmed? Most of the time, it's not during heavy activity. It's when you finally slow down and notice how cluttered your thoughts have become. But what if you didn't wait until you felt stressed to clean up your thinking? What if instead you use the quiet parts of your day to gently reset? You don't need hours. You just need a few honest moments. Moments when you're brushing your teeth, walking across the room, boiling water, sitting in traffic. These are not throwaway moments. They are perfect chances to pause and ask yourself simple, powerful questions. How am I thinking right now? Am I in a negative loop? Am I stuck in past thoughts or future worries? Am I focused on what I can control? Am I being kind to myself in my head? These questions don't need to be dramatic. They don't need a journal or a timer. They just need awareness. They just need your attention. And if you make this a habit, resetting your thoughts during daily pauses, you'll notice something. Your mind starts to get clearer. Not all at once, but slowly and consistently. You catch your inner critic sooner. You soften your judgments. You correct unhelpful thinking before it spirals. That's progress.
You don't need a quiet room or a perfect setup. You need a commitment to meet your own thoughts in the middle of everyday life. That's where your power is, not in escaping the dullness, but using it. It's about turning those in-between minutes into something meaningful, not by adding anything fancy, but by becoming aware of what's already happening inside your head. Most people think mindset is something you build once and it stays strong forever. But mindset is like a muscle. It gets shaped every day by what you feed it, how you talk to yourself, and what you do when you're not paying attention. That's why those dull moments matter so much. They're your training ground. They're the place where you either repeat old patterns or rewire better ones. You don't have to wait until things go wrong to start thinking differently. You can begin today, in the middle of a boring moment, by checking in with your thoughts. You might catch yourself overthinking something small. You might notice you've been harsh on yourself without realizing it. You might see that you've been carrying tension that has no place in your day. This is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of change. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. It won't feel like a chore. It will feel like a chore. It will feel like coming back to yourself, and in time, you'll begin to look forward to those quiet moments, not to fill them, but to use them. You'll use them to breathe, to reset, to realign. You'll notice when your thinking is drifting and gently bring it back. This isn't about becoming a perfectly positive thinker. It's about becoming conscious. It's about choosing thoughts that help you instead of ones that harm you. And that starts with noticing. If you don't pause, you won't notice. And if you don't notice, you can't change anything. Every single day, you're given hundreds of tiny opportunities to check in. Most people waste them. They think change has to come through big goals, long routines, or deep conversations. But your real change is hiding in the boring parts of your day. The parts you try to skip, the parts you try to rush through. That's where your mindset is being shaped, moment by moment. Try this for a day. Every time you catch yourself in a dull moment, stop, take a breath. Ask yourself, where is my mind right now? Don't judge it. Just notice. Then choose a better thought if you can. Something simple, something helpful. It might be as small as I'm okay, or I don't need to overthink this, or I'm going to focus on what I can control. That's all it takes. One quiet decision repeated often enough becomes a pattern, and patterns create your mental foundation. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. You're just distracted. But the good news is, you don't need more time to fix that. You already have time. You just need to use it better. Use the time that's already there, the dull moments, the slow parts, the in-between spaces, and start using them to clean up your thoughts. This doesn't mean you never rest. It doesn't mean you're on high alert all the time. It means your rest is mindful. It means your breaks are intentional. It means your everyday routine becomes a place of growth instead of a place of numbness. You'll start to feel lighter. Not because life gets easier, but because your mind isn't carrying the weight of unchecked negativity. You'll start to feel more focused, not because you're working harder, but because your mind isn't filled with mental clutter. You'll feel more present. Not because the world slows down, but because you're no longer running from your thoughts. Every time you use a dull moment to reset how you think, you take one more step toward clarity. You train your brain to stop going down the old paths. You build a new pattern, a healthier, more grounded, more present way of thinking. And eventually, that becomes your default. Not panic, not doubt, not anxiety, but awareness, strength, calm. You don't have to change your whole life today. Just change how you use the quiet moments. That's where it starts. That's where it always starts. And once you begin, you won't want to go back to the way it was before. Because this new way feels honest. It feels empowering. It feels like you're actually in control of your thoughts again. And when your thoughts are clear, your actions follow. You make better choices. You speak with more purpose. You stop wasting energy on things that don't deserve it. That's what happens when you take your thinking seriously, even in the simplest parts of your day. So pause the scroll. Step out of autopilot. Use that dull moment. Breathe. Reflect. Reset. Because this is where your mindset is being made. And every time you choose awareness over avoidance, you become a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more aligned with the person you're meant to be. Chapter 9. Let the pause teach you what really matters. Most people move from one thing to the next without ever stopping long enough to ask themselves why. They keep doing, keep reaching, keep pushing, because that's what they've been taught. Keep going, keep building, keep moving forward. But at some point, all that movement starts to blur. It becomes harder to tell what you're chasing and what you're running from. That's when the pause becomes necessary. Not optional, necessary. Because the pause is where you remember what really matters. When you pause, you break the momentum that's been carrying you without your full awareness. You give yourself a chance to breathe, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. And in that space, something powerful happens. You begin to see what's been driving you. You begin to notice what you've been ignoring. You start to feel the things you've been too busy to feel. And those realizations, they aren't distractions, they're information, they're reminders. They're pieces of the truth that got buried under the noise of your routine. The pause isn't about stepping away from life. It's about stepping into it with more clarity. When you stop rushing, you give yourself the space to notice what's no longer aligned. You become aware of what's draining you. You realize which parts of your life feel forced, and you start to sense what you've been missing. Not the things on your to-do list, but the things in your heart that you stopped paying attention to. The world moves fast. It rewards speed, urgency, productivity. But it rarely rewards reflection. And yet it's in reflection where meaning lives. You can't find purpose in a rush. You find it when you're willing to stop and look at your life with honesty. Not judgment, honesty. You ask yourself, what am I doing all this for? What do I care about? What am I sacrificing in the name of progress? The answers aren't always easy, but they're necessary. When you pause, you begin to feel how much of your energy is going to things that don't really move you. You notice how often you say yes out of obligation instead of desire. You see how much of your time is being filled instead of lived, and slowly, your priorities start to shift. Not because someone told you to shift them, but because the silence made it easier. You don't need a major life event to wake you up. You just need to get quiet. You just need to listen. The truth about what matters has always been inside you. You just haven't had the stillness to hear it. That's why the pause is not wasted time. It's where your real wisdom starts to rise. Sometimes in the pause you remember people, someone you haven't called, someone you've taken for granted. And suddenly, connection matters more than success. Sometimes you remember dreams, ones you set aside for later, ones you promised to come back to, and now you feel the weight of that delay. Sometimes you remember yourself, the version of you that was excited, creative, full of hope, and you realize you've been surviving when you should be building something meaningful. These aren't dramatic moments, they're quiet, but they're honest. And honesty is what reconnects you with your values. That's what the pause does. It gives you a mirror, not a mirror to judge yourself, but a mirror to see clearly, to see what deserves your energy, to see what you've been giving too much power to to see where you've been out of alignment. Without the pause, it's easy to think that urgency equals importance, that every opportunity needs a yes. That slowing down is falling behind. But once you pause, you realize none of that is true. You realize that real direction only comes from clarity, and clarity only comes from stillness. Think about how many times you've made decisions under pressure, only to look back and wish you'd taken a moment. Think about how often you've ignored your gut because there wasn't enough time to listen to it. Think about how many things you've agreed to out of momentum, not because they mattered, but because they were there. Now think about how different your life would be if you had paused before those decisions. If you had taken even a few minutes to step back and ask yourself, is this right for me? This is why pausing is an act of power. It's not weakness. It's not hesitation. It's strength. It means you're not being pulled in every direction. It means you're leading your choices. It means you respect your time and your energy enough to stop and reflect. The people who live with the most peace are not those who do the most. They're the ones who know what matters and stay close to it. They aren't constantly shifting based on what's popular or expected. They've created space in their lives to understand what actually brings them fulfillment. And that space didn't come from more doing. It came from pausing, observing and adjusting. You can create that for yourself. You don't need permission. You don't need the perfect moment. You need a decision. A decision to make space. A decision to stop chasing everything and start choosing with intention. That decision begins in the pause. So give yourself time today. Step away from the noise. Sit without reaching for your phone. Walk without needing to multitask. Create silence, even if it feels uncomfortable, especially if it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is the sign that you've been avoiding something real. And when you face it, you grow. You start to feel the weight of all the things that don't matter, and you begin to let them go. In that space, you'll begin to find clarity, not because you searched for it, but because you made room for it. You'll see which habits need to shift. You'll feel what you've been missing. You'll recognize the values that have been pushed aside. And more than anything, you'll remember what kind of life you actually want to live. The pause doesn't give you all the answers, but it gives you the right questions. It brings you back to center. It reminds you that your worth isn't in your output. It's in your awareness, in your ability to think clearly, choose wisely and act from a place of depth instead of pressure. You're not meant to live on autopilot. You're not meant to be exhausted all the time. You're not here just to get through the day. You're here to live with clarity, to create a life that reflects what matters to you. But that can only happen if you stop long enough to see it. So take the pause seriously. Don't treat it like something to rush through. Treat it like something sacred. Because in that stillness, you'll find what you've been too busy to see. You'll hear the parts of you that have been quiet for too long. And you'll begin to make choices that feel right. Not just in the moment, but for your future. You don't need to escape your life to reset it. You just need to pause inside it. Take that time. Make it a habit. Even 5 minutes of silence can shift your direction. Even one honest moment can reconnect you with your purpose. And when you do that consistently, you begin to live from a deeper place. Not a louder place. Not a faster place. A wiser one. A place where your actions match your value, where your time reflects your truth, and where your days are shaped not by pressure, but by purpose. That's the gift of the pause. That's the power of listening instead of rushing, of observing instead of reacting, of remembering instead of forgetting. It doesn't take much, just a little time, a little space, a little courage to stop long enough and ask yourself, what really matters to me right now? And when you ask that question often enough, you don't just get answers. You start to build a life around them. A life that feels real. A life that feels right. And a life that finally feels like yours.
Chapter 10. Get quiet long enough to hear your future speak. Most people are too loud inside to hear what's ahead of them. Their minds are full of noise, plans, worries, opinions, regrets, distractions, one thought piled on top of the other. And in the middle of all that mental traffic, they're trying to figure out what to do with their lives. They're trying to make decisions, set goals, find direction, all while drowning in thoughts that don't give them room to breathe. But your future doesn't shout, it whispers, and unless you get quiet, you'll never hear it. You can't hear what's meant for you if you're always tuned into everything else. You can't sense where to go if you're always reacting to where you've been. Most people aren't lost because they have no future. They're lost because they've never created the silence to hear it calling them. They keep moving, keep pushing, keep staying busy, hoping clarity will catch up. But clarity doesn't work like that. It doesn't fight to get your attention. It waits for you to slow down. It waits for you to listen. Getting quiet isn't about being passive. It's not about checking out of life or avoiding responsibility. It's about becoming still enough to notice what actually matters. It's about creating space so your deeper voice, the one beyond fear, beyond pressure, beyond expectations, can rise to the surface. That voice carries the blueprint for your future, but it can't compete with noise. It only shows up when you make space for it. You live in a world that's full of noise. Every device, every screen, every feed is designed to pull your attention in 100 directions. It tells you what to want, how to feel, what to chase. And the more you listen to all of it, the more disconnected you feel. Not because there's no path forward, but because you've become distant from the one you're meant to walk. That's why silence matters. That's why stillness is not just helpful, it's necessary. You need silence to reconnect with your direction. You need stillness to remember what matters to you, not what the world says should matter. You need quiet to recognize what ideas keep returning, what values keep tugging at you, what vision you keep putting off because you've been too distracted to trust it. And you don't find any of that while constantly doing. You find it when you stop. When you get quiet long enough, you start to notice things. Patterns in your thoughts. Emotions you've been avoiding. Desires you've buried under daily pressure. You begin to see how far you've come and how far you still want to go. You realize that some of your habits were born from survival, not purpose. That some of your goals weren't even yours to begin with. These are the kinds of realizations that can't happen when your mind is busy. They need quiet to grow. Quiet is not the absence of thinking. It's the presence of focused awareness. It's a space where your thoughts slow down just enough for your inner voice to speak. That voice won't sound like a checklist. It won't give you step-by-step plans. But it will guide you. It will pull you toward the next right move. Not through pressure, but through calm. Not through panic, but through clarity. You don't need a new app. You don't need more advice. You need to get quiet. You need to clear away the noise you've been carrying and sit with yourself. Just breathe. Let your mind settle. At first, the silence will feel strange. It might even feel empty. That's only because you're not used to it. But if you stay with it, something will shift. You'll begin to hear what's been trying to reach you. Your future isn't hidden, it's waiting behind the noise. And once you remove that noise, the path becomes visible, not in some dramatic moment, but through consistent stillness.
through daily time spent listening instead of talking, reflecting instead of reacting. The answers you're searching for about what to do next, about what's meaningful, about what truly fits your life, they don't live in more content. They don't live in 1,000 opinions. They live in you. They live in the part of you that's buried under noise and stress and distraction. And the only way to get to that part is to slow down and listen. If you're confused, don't speed up, slow down. If you're unsure, don't fill your time with more doing. Empty it, just enough so you can think clearly again. That doesn't mean you stop your responsibility. It means you build quiet into your routine. You make space to disconnect from everything pulling at your attention. You create non-negotiable time, where you just sit with your thoughts, not to fix them, but to hear them. And you don't need hours. Start with 10 minutes a day. No input. Just you. Sit. Breathe. Feel whatever comes up. Let the thoughts rise and fall. Don't follow them. Don't fight them. Just stay quiet long enough to let the surface settle. That's where you start. That's where you begin hearing the voice that has answered. You'll be surprised what shows up. Ideas that felt distant will become clearer. Thoughts you've ignored will return with stronger meaning. Emotions you've pushed down will finally get the space to move through you. And most importantly, direction will begin to form, not in words, but in feeling, a pull, a knowing, a quiet sense that says, this is the next step. You don't need to figure everything out all at once. You just need to hear the next part. And you'll only hear it if you get quiet enough. In silence, you begin to trust yourself again. You stop looking outside for approval. You stop chasing what doesn't align. You start noticing what brings peace, what gives energy, what matters even when no one's watching. That's your future speaking. That's your deeper life showing up. You won't find clarity in rushing. You won't find purpose in volume. You won't discover direction by constantly reacting. You find all of that when you pause, when you listen, when you respect the silence enough to stay in it even when it feels uncomfortable. Getting quiet isn't easy at first. Your mind will resist. It's used to noise. It's used to stimulation. But that resistance is part of the process. It's a sign you're getting close to something real. Stay with it. Don't run. Don't fill the space. Breathe. Wait. Listen. And eventually, something within you will rise. A thought. An idea. A truth. It won't be loud, but it will be clear. And once you hear it, you won't forget it. That's what direction sounds like. That's what your future feels like when it finally gets a voice. This is the kind of discipline most people never develop. Not because they can't, but because they don't stop long enough to try. They stay caught in the cycle. They keep consuming, keep distracting, keep avoiding. But you don't have to do the same. You can choose something better. You can choose to build a life that's rooted in awareness, a life that doesn't just happen, but is created slowly, intentionally, with clarity at the center. And all of that begins in quiet, not in dramatic breakthroughs, not in intense hustle, but in calm, present moments where you listen instead of speak, where you pause instead of push, where you let your future speak before deciding what comes next. That kind of listening changes everything. It brings alignment. It builds strength. It helps you stop wasting energy on paths that don't fit. And over time, it becomes your greatest guide. Not outside noise, not pressure, not fear, but your own quiet wisdom, uncovered in silence. So build that space. Protect it. Return to it daily. Get quiet long enough. Let the noise fall away. Let the thoughts slow down. And just listen. Your future is already speaking. You just have to be still enough to hear it.